Hello and welcome to my channel. I'd just like to say right now that this firearm is unloaded. All these magazines are unloaded. None of them are beyond 30 rounds. They're all just 30 round magazines. These are metal, these are polymer or plastic. And I'm going to be discussing this Egyptian AKM 47 Egyptian Maadi. I think it was imported by Century Arms. There's some really faint marking down here, a stamp, of an importer stamp. And this was imported after America had its first assault weapons ban. Um, it was passed through Congress, and I mean, that's the way things happen around here, if it's passed, then it becomes law, and then certain things are not allowed. And I was still able to purchase this weapon at a gun show in, I believe it was San Antonio, in the early 1980s, after the assault weapons ban. Now, what they had to do was, it was not allowed to be imported with a pistol grip. They considered that bad. So, to get around it, it was shipped with a thumb hole stock. If you've ever used a thumb hole stock, those are okay for like bench rest shooting and stuff like that. But if you've got to maneuver around, all that extra wood gets in your way. It's a piece of crap. And so you were allowed to replace it with American parts. As a matter of fact, if you put more American parts on it, the better it was, because then the less it would be considered an assault weapon. It was not allowed to have a flash hider, a bayonet lug. Of course, you could buy aftermarket flash suppressors on there as long as they were American. It no longer had threads there. They just milled that off. What else made it? It was shipped with a 5-round magazine, which is okay if you want to go hunting with it. But I wouldn't really recommend. You can do it, but I wouldn't really recommend the 7.62 by 35 millimeter. 39 millimeter for hunting. It would take like whitetail and stuff like that. I mean, it could be done, but these are not really hunting weapons, unless you're hunting humans. And I think that's why a lot of the stigma comes from these weapons, is because, a lot of what I'm going to say is just personal opinion. I'm not sponsored by any of these companies. If this video does get monetized and you see any ads, if they're Second Amendment friendly or whatever, I recommend you support them, even though I don't know them and I'm not getting anything for it, or maybe I am, I don't know. I'm not directly sponsored by any of these, is what I'm trying to say. But I'm going to express some opinions that some people may find offensive and stuff. And all I'm doing is just talking, and having a dialogue. All right, now, if this weapon is so bad, that as many people say it is, then you would think over a period of time you would just become susceptible to it corrupting you, right? If it's so evil, if it's so bad, the longer you're exposed to it, the more likely you would be. You hear a lot of these statistics, houses, that have firearms are much more likely to have it used against themselves than anyone else. A lot of times that's because the weapon was either improperly stored, or the people that were around the weapon were never taught safe weapon handling or how to use it. When I grew up, we had a glass cabinet. I mean, it wasn't tempered bulletproof glass either, that had all kinds of weapons displayed right there in the living room. And as a kid, as curious, I knew where Dad kept a .22 revolver loaded in the bedroom in his dresser drawer in case of things that go bump in the night. It was a Harrington and Richards 9-shot .22 pistol, which later came in pretty handy one day. But I disagree with that. So, and also whenever laws are passed, you've got to watch out for, they want to be specific. They want to ban this. They want to make sure that nobody can have this, you can have anything else, but you can't have that, But the problem is, in trying to ban something like this, the word assault weapon. First off, this is a semi-automatic weapon. It's not an assault weapon. If it was an assault weapon, the first thing that would come off from safe is full auto. You have to force it to go into full auto. Let me just show you this. All right, now also I'd like to say, anytime anybody hands you a weapon or goes to hand you a weapon, assume it's loaded until you've checked it. And the way you check it is, if they haven't already pointed it at you, you make sure you don't point it at them. You point the weapon in a safe direction, you pull the bolt back, and you make sure the chamber's empty, the magazine's removed. Now remember, on a semi-automatic weapon, especially an AK, they don't hold the bolt back on the last shot. So you could think, all right, this thing's empty. You pull a loaded magazine out, you still got a live round in the chamber, and with it sitting like this, all you got to do is pull the trigger. It's only going to go off once, but once is all it needs if it's when you don't expect it. Let me fold the stock now. This is an aftermarket stock that allows you to fold it to a more compact Tapco also. Again, I've got some of their magazines. You put your thumb down here and you pull down. It's a very positive lockup, but it makes it much more compact. You can still insert and remove the magazines. It's a little bit more tricky getting to the selector lever when you're in this position. You can buy other ones where you get an ambidextrous type of safety on it, but you'd have to take this out, and see right here, here's Egypt something automatic rifle. I'll have to take that paint off. It's been taken to 7.62 by 39. It should say semi-automatic. It's not full auto. I put this paint on here. I think that's part of the serial number. Now, the difference between an AK-47 and an AKM is this is stamped sheet metal receiver instead of milled and forged, I believe. You get this little dimple here, that's one of them. They changed the range setting on this to be a little bit more realistic, I think. I think those are in meters and stuff. I don't really know everything. This is part of the takedown of the gas tube. I added this. The one thing that one of the things about AKs is they usually didn't come with optics. There was a rail that you could attach over here to the receiver. Sometimes I've tried things up on here, but this is just a cover held on by a spring, a dust cover. It's not very sturdy. It's not very reliable. What is this guy? Ultimax, patent pending. Ultimac. And it's a Picatinny rail, I believe. But you can put a red dot sight up there or whatever. It's kind of far away, here's your rear sight. Now, a lot of problems that people would have, with AKs is, especially with these type of sights, is when they're looking through the rear peep sight, they'll pick up either this and think it's the front post or this. And in this case, you're going to be far to the left. And over here, you're going to be far to the right of what you're aiming at, because you should be right here. So see if you go, that's to the left. It's opposite a lot of times. And this, you'd be aiming to the right if you focused on this one. On the left, it's kind of odd. And then you'd be aiming over here because you're looking through a rear. It's not easy to pick up either. It's just a little U-notch. It's tiny. Now, they make aftermarket. I almost had some aftermarket glow rear sights and everything. I think the East German Army made some for that. This has been made by the Chinese, the Soviets, they not only made them, they gave out their production facilities and everything. They set up a factory in Egypt. So this was made off of the original Soviet equipment. Now, as far as accuracy goes, AKs are not known for, being super accurate and everything. That's not what I was going for with this gun. I wanted a gun that could handle not being, have to be babied all the time, and can handle adverse conditions. So, the tolerances are a little crude and a little bit rough, but I've had I guess I can't even mention it, type of drum on the bottom here, and I was shooting it at an old Harley Davidson engine block that had been discarded down in an arroyo in New Mexico around Albuquerque, and I was with my son-in-law. Not son-in-law, he was my stepson. I didn't have any children. I don't have a son-in-law. He was shooting my AR-15. I was shooting this one. We had just finished when the sheriff or somebody pulled up, and they were cool about it, man. They weren't starting any crap with us or anything. They were just kind of, like curious and everything. And I said, oh, I was just here with my son, and we were just shooting down here. But the barrel, the handguard, and I had a wooden, the wooden handguard that it came on this, got so hot it was smoking from just semi-automatic firing that thing down. It was fun, and I'm telling you, it's just fun to do that. I had no hitch with it. I've never had any malfunction. Not that they can't happen. These are not, impossible. You still need to, maintain them. This down here is a cleaning rod, but you can see they just milled off the dangerous bayonet lug, which is of dubious value on an AK anyway, because it's kind of a short weapon. You could still use it, with a bayonet, but really, bayonets are kind of like, I always wanted to get one. I guess you still can, but they used to be really cheap. You could get AK bayonets with the little wire cutter and everything. They're not that great as knives, and stuff like that, but just to add to it, it would have been nice. But I still can. It's just, I added that sling to it. This is not, I just put that on there. And basically, this is safe when it's pushed up. It's another objection to that. You hear that? That's pretty loud. Taking them on and off safe. That blocks the slide from coming all the way back, and we already know it's clear. It blocks the trigger from being pulled. When you go to fire, again, that's a loud clack type of sound. It's of the the AK type of magazine, so you've got to put, again, this is empty. It's kind of a heavy rifle anyway. You kind of like lip forward. It's a lot like a Mini 14 magazine, which I think copied this. You put it in and you rock it in. There are ways you can. This isn't the easiest thing to disconnect, but you can use the front lip of your other magazine to knock it out of the way to like speed load it in there. This isn't, like I said, isn't it? But it's fairly secure. If you've ever seen one of these firing when they cycle, the whole thing flexes around. I mean, it's kind of crazy, You'd think, oh, man, it feels sturdy and everything, but watch one of them when it's being fired with a high-speed close-up, of the bolt mechanism and everything. And you can see why the accuracy isn't super great, but, in modern theory, a lot of times it's more geared toward keep their heads down, spray and pray, while you call in heavy artillery or you call in the drones or whatever it is you're using. Sometimes, like all you got to do is watch anything that's been going on in Ukraine, and it's still being used. The advantage, I think, That was a 7.62 by 39 over the smaller high-velocity cartridges is that the penetration ability of it on things like trees and solid objects. So the Soviet Union went from the AK-47 to the AK-74. I think the dimensions are like 5.45 by 39, so they basically just took the same cartridge, but they necked it down because of what they saw was going on with Vietnam and us using the 223 or 5.56. And so they just, they could still use a lot of their tooling and stuff, just change it around slightly and get. They did something a little different with their bullet. They had a little space and everything in it, and a little lead core, and it was pretty devastating. It would tend to tumble when it hit, so even though it would meet, like Geneva Convention requirements of not using hollow point or something like that, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong about the Geneva Convention and stuff, but, I'm not talking about dumb bullets and stuff. I'm talking about, anyway, all these conventions. You can't use this, but you can use high explosive on people. It's crazy. It's fairly effective, and they lose a little bit of penetrating ability, but they get more. They can carry more cartridges, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not a super tactician or anything on this stuff. It's stuff I read. A lot of it I read in Soldier Fortune when I was in the military. And here's how screwed up the U.S. Air Force is. They would sell Soldier Fortune in the base magazine, in the BX, in the magazine department, along with Playboy and all this other stuff. And one day, I was on break. I was sitting outside our classified shop over in England, and one of the supervisors we had, master sergeant or something, walked by, and he saw me reading the Soldier of Fortune, and he said, you shouldn't be reading that. I said, why? And he said, it gives us a bad image. And I said, they sell it in the BX. Us? It's just me, you, here on an Air Force base. There's not a lot of civilians running around, I mean, that's when I started realizing, here I am defending everybody's freedom of speech and freedom to do this. And in the military, really, you got rid of freedoms they give to you, and that's it. And those can be rescinded, So you don't have a lot of rights, man. You really don't. And you're fighting for rights. So I mean, any people that have served in the military, I mean, that's just one of the things that they gave up for defending their country. And I don't ask for sympathy. I don't want, like, oh, thank you and all this other stuff. I'm not asking for that. I'm talking about the other people that serve, because I was in the Air Force, man. I was in electronic warfare. I mean, so I've been in some hairy places and seen some hairy things, but not much as the people that were in the Army or the Marines, or even the Navy. A lot of times they would get in some crap. And I was in during a time, when it was mostly peaceful. I mean, we had somebody got assassinated while, the president got assassinated while I was over in Korea. That was kind of different. I lived under martial law while we were there, while he was still alive. That's about as close to, a combat zone as I came. But, back then terrorism was happening all over the place, so you could be anywhere. If you were in the military, you were a target. But anyways, getting back to this, I love this gun. The Second Amendment is not there for hunting. I know I keep saying this. The Second Amendment is not there so that we, the people, have the power to overthrow the government. No. What it is there for in case we, the people, have a tyrant or a corrupt president, gets taken over by a foreign country, and he just says, yeah, come on in, China. Come on in, Russia. Take over. And we start seeing foreign troops, and he's co-opted our military somehow. This is to keep them from thinking about that idea. It's not that we'll necessarily be effective. It's that you've got an entire population with all these guns that is willing to say, hey, wait a minute. We didn't agree to this. We did not agree to this. You know, since when did we agree this to happening? And somebody says, shut up, I'm going to use the military against you. And people say, how would you fight against F-16s and tanks and bombs? Guess who's driving those? American citizens, you know. That's why you don't use, I think it's a Posse Comitatus Act or something like that. You can't use the American military against American citizens. That's why we have a police force and all this other stuff. And the National Guard is there to help us during emergencies, you know, like a hurricane or something. Not to drive through with tanks and suppress freedom of speech, you know, or any of your Second Amendment rights. Any rights that you have that are written in the Constitution, there is a procedure to take them away. If they take it away and they go through the procedure, there's a procedure to put them right back in. You don't have to get violent on any of this. All you got to do is say, look, it's written right here. You are not playing by the rules. Why should we play by the rules if you're not playing by the rules? You must play by the rules. And the rules are, if you want to amend the Constitution of the United States, you need 2/3 of the United States, first off, to agree to it. Good luck on that, you know. Good luck to getting 2/3 of the United States of America to agree to give up the Second Amendment. You know, when that happens, hey, then yeah, we're just going to have to go with the times and accept it, you know. And I agree there's got to be limitations of stuff, but we already have limitations on stuff, you know. If I were to use this in an illegal manner in any way, it doesn't matter how many rounds this thing would hold. I used it in an illegal manner. It's no longer lawful for me to have that. The government or anybody else is free to try to stop me in any way because I become unlawful, you know. But as long as I'm using this lawfully, if I got children or anything, I'm storing it so that nobody, you know, has access to it without it being locked or secured and everything. It's not easy. It's not easy to close this thing back up. I'll just leave it like that. But yeah, that's my little rant, you know, on the Second Amendment. Is it's an amendment to the Constitution of the United States. They were sitting there saying, look, even though we know this should be obvious, let's just put down in writing a few things that should be obvious, that if you're a citizen of the United States, this is how we're going to act towards you, you know. First off, it's a representative government, you know. We're not doing whatever the king says. The president is representing us. It's a representative democracy, you know, constitutional republic. We can't have a real democracy because that would mean everybody in the United States would have to be in every meeting and every saying. So we have a representative democracy, you know, people represent us. And that's where things can get crazy because they don't always represent everybody. They represent sometimes their own special interest. And I'm not going to get into all that about special interest groups. They can be good and bad. We all know. But anyways, I just like to say that it would really upset me if a weapon that I've owned for over 45 years was suddenly banned. They suddenly decide that no, you can't have them, and they're going to do some buyback program where they give you pennies on the dollar for what you put into it, you know, and then they destroy it, all because it's bad. And in the meanwhile, they're not just going to get rid of AR-15s and AK-47s. They're going to get rid of anything they consider bad that, you know, you couldn't use for hunting, or, you know, they're going to use some other excuse, and they're going to completely skip and omit legitimate self-defense. More people are probably saved by weapons than taken by weapons, I would estimate, just because of the things they had to stop. I mean, you know, there's no way of putting numbers on this stuff. But when they do, Responsible citizens are not your problem, no matter what they're armed with. But if you start acting up, pitchforks and shovels and axes and stuff and hammers, can be weapons too. And a lot of people have had to resort to that. Why? Because these were taken away from them. That's one of the first things they're going to do when they try to restrict your liberties, is restrict your access to weapons. It will start off with things that they consider bad, and it'll just continue on. Like if you included this, semi-automatic weapons are bad. Most people don't need a semi-automatic weapon to shoot a deer or to take out a dove. It should only be revolver. And when the Constitution was written, they only had black powder and muzzle loaders. It was good enough for us back then. Well, your freedom of speech didn't apply to digital media back then. You want to give that all up? That's evolved. It's been determined that it's okay to, to apply that to what you're saying on a cell phone, or, So, anyway, that's basically enough. Right? The advantage to a plastic magazine is they don't weigh as much as a metal. I think this is a P-Mag. Yeah, Magpul Industries. This is a Tapco. They are much lighter. And you take them apart by pushing that down and pulling this out. Then you can pull the spring out and clean, it's got a plastic follower. Same way with the metal ones, except, they've got a metal lip up here, which is a little bit more durable sometimes. And these ribs back here, you may or may not get them, but that's just to make it, a little bit stronger metal. They come apart also, but, you got to be careful with these. They are easy to take apart sometimes. So there you go. I don't want this to run forever. They've already throttled me enough on my videos. If you like this content, I usually don't ask for a thumbs up or anything like that, but just let me know. Thumbs up or thumbs down, really, honestly. If you don't want me talking about guns and only stick to knives and everything, I'm already restricted enough about what I can talk about. But if they can say, this is another thing I wanted everybody to consider. If they can say that for whatever reason, live streaming, touching or handling a weapon is not allowed, it's against policies. What if it says it could be dangerous? It's potentially dangerous. Whatever you're handling could be potentially dangerous to any idiot off the street. First off, this is for adults only. Most adults should have brains functioning. If they're not, we need to invest more in education and do something about that, But believe me, handling this or handling a razor blade, a straight edge razor blade, can be dangerous, It's possible, yeah, We should be able to talk about that, if for no other reason, just to promote safety, Just to show someone how, a lot of times I've seen people will say, oh, that's a nice gun, can I see it? And it's fully loaded, and these idiots just pull it out of their waistband, usually aiming it at the person while they hand it to them. They pick it up, they proceed to aim it at the person who just handed it at them, and start handling it. Finger in the trigger guard, sometimes trying to work the action, figure out how it goes off. It's dangerous, If you teach people at a very young age, when they are first able to even see or handle a firearm. If you don't have firearms and you don't like guns in your house, I guarantee they're going to have friends that do. And one of these days, they're going to walk into their parents' bedroom. I don't want to offend anybody of my viewers who have this name, but Johnny's going to walk in there with Timmy, and Johnny's going to show Timmy this cool-looking gun that he found under his dad's pillow or bed. And they're going to start handling it. Now, if Johnny or Timmy had been trained, first off, if Johnny was brought up the way I was, Johnny would never take Timmy in there and show him that. And if Johnny touched it, he'd be expecting God or lightning bolt to come out of the sky and zap them right away. I mean, it's that amount of danger you're risking, because if my parents ever caught me handling a weapon without their approval before, you know, I don't remember, it was well into my teenage years, even then, yeah, you had a reason to fear your parents back then, because it wasn't like, we're going to take away your access to Game Boy. There was no Game Boy. We're going to take your cell phone away. No, they did have physical punishment though, and that, and you know, like restricting you. I mean, later on they started doing more restrictions and less spankings, because after a while I became immune to that. Like, go ahead, spank away, and I'll laugh, which is a mistake, because they'll just spank harder or use something else, you know. Oh, you think that's funny? Let me get a switch or a fly swatter or a belt. Anyway, yeah, there you go. I've run my mouth too long. I've reached my limit. My internal clock is saying you've run your mouth too long. So, thank you for a weapon. Please let me know whether you like this type of content or not, and that will determine whether or not you see any more of this, because I don't have a whole lot of firearms, but I would like to talk about them, and I've experienced a lot on working at a gun range and just living in Texas mostly throughout my life, but living in other countries and everything, and it's been an interesting life. And I would sit there and read ballistic, you know, like Cartridges of the World. I would read that and find that fascinating. Nowadays, that would be like reference material to most people. But I was that geeked into it. I would look at obsolete cartridges and when they were made and their velocities, and, you know, look at stories of it. I mean, I was into it. So, yeah. Nowadays, that's not profitable, but, you know, still, like I said, it's not always about money with me, you know. I mean, if I can make money on something I like, that's fine, but I'm not going to bend over backwards to do it. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.